The topic today is going to be the art and science of pricing. So for all of you who run your own freelance businesses, I'm sure that many of you who are attending have struggled with pricing. And it's interesting to note that pricing objections are very rarely to do with the actual price. Often it can be down to psychological issues, perhaps the way that pricing is presented, the confidence with which it's presented as well. So there's all sorts of different nuances there that Brook is going to help us explore today. Now, just for those of you that don't know Brook, a little bit of introduction. So Brook is a digital marketing and trainer. She's a business coach with 15 years experience in digital communication. She offers public courses, online programs, vocational training, and over her career, she's worked with hundreds of small businesses on creative marketing, brand building, communication strategies, and just helping business owners to better define their businesses and to run things more successfully. So that's what we're going to be covering off today. We're lucky to have Brook, as I've said. So without further ado, Brook, welcome. And thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. That was a rousing introduction. I have got big shoes to fill. So I'm going to share my screen now. And as Oliver said, I hope this is not the end of our conversation. Please feel free to use the chat and to ask any question, because if you've got a question, then it's quite likely other people do. So, the old elephant in the room, no prizes for guessing what this is indicating. We all, I believe, have problems talking about money so openly, unless, of course, we're lucky enough to be born in one of those rare families where it is discussed openly at the dinner table without, lots of judgment and lots of emotion. It's just kind of talked about the same way you talk about the weather. It's been my experience that that's a pretty rare event. And as Oliver said, I do a lot of training and I do a lot of vocational training where they bring me in at the end and I do a kind of a short, sharp, how to start a business session. And it became clear to me that money was an issue for a lot of people. It became clear to me from the comments that people would say in relation to how much they should be charging in their new fledgling businesses, that this was actually a big taboo and continues to be, and it needed to be discussed because we're never going to make more money if we continue with this taboo. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be talking about how to use value pricing, and I'm going to explain exactly what value pricing is. We're going to be communicating value so that your prospective clients get it. A lot of what we do in marketing and sales is helping people understand the value that we are selling to them. We are going to talk about pricing rules or principles, and there are so many pricing principles or pricing rules, and I use those inverted commas on purpose because there aren't really any rules, but there are certainly repeated things that businesses do, and once we know what these are, we can start using them to our advantage. And then finally, we're going to end up talking about some behavioural psychology principles that help your prospective customers get to a yes. And I want to also introduce the idea that we are not just business owners selling things, we are also consumers buying things. So I'm going to ask you to draw on your own experience of buying things, and especially the last experience you had of buying something where you were really, really intimidated. Yeah, because this is something that I want you to keep in mind when you are crafting your pitches and your proposals and discussing with clients about jobs needing doing or work to be done, because they are likely, or at least some of them, to be feeling equally awkward and intimidated as well. So that's our job, to help them through that. So why do we need to get better at this? Why do we need to get better at pricing? Because a small business owner of 1 to 4 years experience in Australia earns an average of $50,000. Now that might sound great to you, but that is well under the national average. So one with 5 to 9 years experience earns an average of $63,000, and one with 10 to 19 years experience earns less than $100,000, $82,000. So I don't know about you, but for me, that looks, pretty woeful. These are not figures that, fill me with joy and optimism. So many small business owners, I talk to small business owners every day, and lots don't pay themselves, or they pay themselves a bare minimum, and they keep a lot of the money in the business as operating money, operating expenses. And oftentimes we are commonly waiting far too long to get paid, and we have little to no recompense to this. Now, the other major reason why this is so important is because Australian small businesses are the backbone of the economy. And as I don't need to point out, we're in a bit of strife, we're in a bit of mess. So we need to get the business in the door. We need to keep the money circulating, because we need to, do our bit to get the economy back on track. Yeah. And small business owners and sole traders are largely ignored by the government, especially sole traders, especially non-employing small traders, despite the fact that we have, systems that the government doesn't necessarily recognize. For example, I'm part of many systems where we refer tens of thousands of dollars of business between, each other. So, so we are pivotal. We make up the majority of businesses in Australia. So what is value pricing exactly? Now, this is particularly useful for service providers, but it doesn't mean that it's not applicable also to products, to people that sell products. So for people that sell products, we have, a different kettle of fish. We have our raw materials, we have our manufacturing processes, we have all of that stuff. But for service providers, we are selling, in effect, promises. We are selling our word. People have to trust us enough that we are going to do what we say we're going to do. So value pricing is part and parcel of that. Value pricing is trying to understand what is at the heart of what we're selling. What is it exactly? It's not just words on a page for a copywriter. Yeah. It's not just pixels, pushing pixels for a web designer. There is much more to it than that. So what is the value that we're seeking to sell to people? So the first part that I need to say is that I see a lot of business owners hiding from people. And you might be thinking, maybe she's talking about me. Let me explain. So I see a lot of business owners, they're on social media. They are going through the motions of, putting out regular marketing. They're perhaps updating their website regularly. Maybe they're blogging regularly. Maybe they're even sending regular email newsletters. But they're not actually being direct with people, and they're kind of waiting to be asked. They're waiting for somebody to tap them on the shoulder and say, you're who we need. You're the one we want. Yeah. And I hear this all the time. If people wanted me, they know where to find me. They can see my services page. I've got a website. I've got a services page. Surely if they wanted me, they'd have found me by now. And oftentimes we're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face because we're not proactively pitching to people. We're not introducing ourselves to people. We're not getting curious about people. We're not being actively curious about other people. So if we're to get into value pricing, if we're to use value pricing, we need to understand the nitty-gritty detail of what it's costing people not to work with us. We need to understand the nitty-gritty detail of exactly how much people gain by working with us. Yeah, and we can't find this out if we're hiding from them, if we're not proactively asking questions, surveying people, putting up short, sharp polls in Facebook groups, perhaps. And also the other thing that happens, and this is very, very common if you're lacking confidence. It's a common thing if you feel nervous. If you don't feel comfortable in your own skin, you're in a client meeting or you're meeting a prospect, you talk too much. You're like, oh, I can't sit in silence. I've got to chat about the weather or, oh God, what was in the news lately? Like, what am I supposed to say here? So if we can just get more comfortable with silence, and if we can get used to directing the conversation through asking better questions of people and listening closely, then we can start understanding the heart of the value that we seek to offer people. We can understand their particular situation in a hell of a lot more detail than before. Because a lot of us are making a lot of assumptions. I make assumptions. I'm certain that we make assumptions because we have to in order to survive. Yeah, we have to take shortcuts, cognitive shortcuts, to help our poor brains to get through the day. But the problem is a lot of these assumptions cost us money. And I'm talking about assumptions like, you know, there's no way I could possibly earn 100,000 working during school hours. There's no way I could possibly earn 200,000 in my particular industry. There's no way I could earn 300,000, you know, without becoming some workaholic shell of a person, and people won't like me, and my clients won't like me either because I'll be charging too much, blah, 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 blah. A big one. People can't afford this. This person can't afford this. Yeah, this is a huge one. Trying to understand, you know, what the person can afford. We are making it, you know, it is none of our business to put our brains into other people's wallets to try and preempt what is in somebody else's bank account. That is none of our business. Yeah, it's a fool's errand for many, many reasons, not least of which it's costing us money. Okay, so what is the formula? There is a formula to communicating value, and this is the formula that hopefully runs throughout your marketing, and particularly in your sales, is particularly apparent in your sales. You can qualify and quantify value. You do this through data and research about the efficacy of what you do, about, you know, the efficacy of your particular technical skill. Feedback surveys, whether they are your feedback surveys or big industry feedback surveys, they're both relevant. They are absolutely relevant. Testimonials. So testimonials are, you know, a short, sharp insight into somebody else's experience, and they're useful for your prospective customers, but they're super useful for you. They're super useful for you as a business owner to better understand your point of difference. Sometimes the marketers call this the USP, you know, to figure out what makes you valuable to people, what makes you different from others. Case studies, again, this is your qualitative, you know, research. This enables you to really kind of get into the nitty-gritty detail of the before and after. Press coverage, any kind of media coverage, both positive and negative, may well be useful to your business to communicate value. And it does not need to mention you. Your business does not need to be featured in this media coverage for it to be valuable and relevant to communicating value. And then finally, social proof. So social media has many, many purposes. But one of the purposes it has is that we are social animals. We're attempting to understand, is this a trustworthy business? Should I trust this person? They want 50% up front. Like, do I really want to give them a big chunk of change? They say they can help, but, you know, I don't know, words are cheap. I don't know if I believe them. So social media helps us to give that social proof. It helps us understand, you know, my friends like this business, my family seem to know this business, like this business, you know, they must be legit, they must be trustworthy. So the before and after, I think the dieting industry has a lot to answer for, but they have given us this one piece of gold, and it is such an effective piece of marketing. The before and the after, you can immediately see, you know, the value that's inherent in that, you know, the process of getting from before and getting from before to after. So how do we use this? How do we put this into a proposal, a quotation, maybe a sales page, if we have sales pages on our websites? If we want to share out, you know, the dollar figures, you don't have to have a dollar figure on a sales page. But certainly my life changed, my business changed pretty much overnight once I started publishing a lot of my pricing. So we do this by highlighting the problems, worries, inconveniences that your prospective client has told you in their words. Again, assumptions cost money. There's been multiple times when somebody's attempted to sell something to me and they're talking about something and I'm like, they're clearly excited by that thing, but I'm not excited. I'm like, oh, don't really care. Yeah. That's why we've got to ask those questions and listen really closely, listen deeply, pay attention to what they say and what they don't say. And then we've got our best case scenario. So we want to paint the best case scenario as well. Yeah, because we're selling the transformation. We're selling a transformation. We're not selling the process. We're not selling the system. We're not selling the nitty-gritty detail of exactly how we're going to help people. People care far less about the process than we necessarily think they do. Most of us are fixated on, how we do what we do because we're geeks. We're subject matter geeks. This is what we do and we're excited by it, God damn it. Yeah, our clients aren't necessarily excited by the process. They just want the outcome. They want the transformation that comes at the end. So your client has told you, hopefully, what they want. You have asked them further questions to get to the heart of their best case scenario. And then you can use your own knowledge, you can use your own perspective to hold a higher vision for them, to hold a higher vision for how life could change for them, for how things could be for them, if only they would purchase this thing and have this transformation that you offer. So, great quote from Warren Buffett: price is what you pay and value is what you get. Yeah, I teach lots of courses on how to start a business, how to start a side business. And right at the beginning of all the courses, what is business? Business is the exchange of value for cash. Yeah, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whatever the thing is, it's the exchange of value for cash. There has to be cash involved. So attempting to compete on price is a race to the bottom, and I see people do this all the time and it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart. And I've had clients, try this on me before multiple times. I made all the mistakes and not just once or twice. I made them for years, years and years and years and years. It's a bit of a fool's errand because we're always going to end up resenting the client. We're going to end up resenting the work and we're going to attract painful people, the people that are wanting the lowest price and not the people that value what you do. These are not your ideal clients. If they cannot afford you, they are not your ideal clients. Yeah. And there are creative ways to get to them. If, for example, it's a vulnerable or marginalized group of people, you can absolutely service that group of people, but you're not asking for money from that group. You're coming through a government agency, as an example, as a hypothetical. All right, so guidelines for pricing and proposals, and I'd love to hear from you. If, Oliver, you have a question? Did you have a question for me?
Yeah, I did, Brooke, and this is something that is, I think, regardless of the business that you're in, whether you're in a big business or a small business, and certainly something that we think about here a lot at Rounded, is that question of value versus cost. Mm-hmm. And I just wondered, can you give any, so we find here, just from our perspective, that there are times when you need to be upfront about cost. Mm-hmm. And I find personally as a buyer that the more smoke and mirrors around cost, mm-hmm. the more I question value. Yep. Because it's like they've got something to hide. Mm-hmm. But also it's like, it seems to me that there's a time to talk about cost. Mm-hmm. But then there's a time also to switch that to value. Can you talk about maybe a little bit about that transition? Because I think it's sometimes, difficult to know. Yeah. Where you can't ignore cost altogether. And you do want to focus on value, but there is a very sort of specific time to talk about those sorts of things.
Oh, look, absolutely.
Could you expand on that a bit, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ballpark figure question, I was asked yesterday, and I did give them a ballpark figure. So I would give a ballpark figure to two people. I would give a ballpark figure to the tire kickers, who I'm not going to go to jump through hoops to write them a quote and write them a proposal when I get the sense that they're not serious. Yeah. So, oftentimes you get into a situation where somebody's being quite pushy, and I can just, I've been doing this I've been self-employed for 12 years now. I've got pretty good intuition, and I'm like, nah, no, you're going to be a tire kicker. So I'll give them a ballpark figure so they can, bye. I might give people a ballpark figure if I feel that they're fairly serious and we've already done a kind of a good discussion. We've already had the rapport building. I've already asked lots of questions. I've already got a sense of, what the dealio is. So in that scenario, I might give a ballpark figure if I feel, there's some trust there. And if they, I can feel that they just they're a straight shooter. They just want to get a sense of it. But I will still go through the process of writing them a proposal to show them exactly what's included, what's not included, what the terms and conditions are. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, is that sufficient? The other thing too is that you can always put prices on your website. And like I said earlier, I found my business changed overnight when I started doing that. Yeah, I had so many tire kickers for so many years, and a lot of that, of course, was my fault. Because I wasn't clear. I wasn't clear on what the process should be. I wasn't clear on what I would tolerate. I wasn't clear on what my boundaries were or what I thought was reasonable or unreasonable. So it just ends up, you become like a bitter shell of a person where you start to resent people, you're like, everybody wants something, it's not a nice place to be, and it's really not great for business. Awesome. How do you deal with tire kickers? Yeah. Is that a question for me or a question for others?
I was actually just throwing that out to the
good.
To the
I'd
group.
love to hear.
Yeah, so if anybody's got questions, please put them in for Brooke. Love to know how you guys manage tire kickers. There's a lot of different ways. I would love to hear your experiences. Sorry, Brooke, I'll shut up and let you.
No. So guidelines for pricing and proposals, one way of getting rid of tire kickers is to get them to fill out a form. Yeah, and I call it a SMART form because there's plenty of average forms. I'm a little bit of a geek with forms. I wrote a very unpopular blog post that nobody's read called Fun with Forms because, I like the act of trying to ask the pertinent questions that educate people through the process, that educate you because you're receiving the answers, and give some kind of insight. So I almost always throw in a question that's a little bit left of field, left of center, just to kind of gauge people's response. I ask people if they're a dog person or a cat person. That's very informative. I also ask them who their favorite Beatle is. If they say Ringo, you're like, Ringo, righto. No offense to any drummers out there, but, he's not a popular choice. Then I would organise a time to meet on the phone. So sometimes I would book people into Acuity scheduling. I love Acuity. It's changed my life. It's just the best thing ever. Calendly is another one. I know Dubsado, if anybody's using Dubsado, has a scheduling tool. But again, for the tire kickers, they tend to drop off. Now, on the phone call, I'd be asking further smart questions because great salespeople really are great listeners. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about sales because we've all had bad experiences, right? We've all had experiences with salespeople who were rubbish, where we have buyer's remorse and we just can't, we walk out going, "Ooh, I need a shower." It's revolting. Great salespeople are people. They're social. They're naturally interested in other people. And they're excellent at asking questions and listening. They are curious about other people. Now, in the proposal, I'm not a fan of those massive, long proposals. You might be, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you to change what you're doing, but in my world, in my experience, people just kind of look at the top and they look at the bottom. They kind of skim the rest. They want to get the figure. But right at the top, in the very opening part, dear whatever and ever, or it might say quote. I did a quote this morning, incidentally. I put about 2 paragraphs at the top. And that is the pains and the problems that they've told me, maybe how much it's costing them. If you have that information, can you get it in dollar figures? Is that relevant to you? And then the best possible outcomes for them. So what are they most hoping for? What have they told you is their best case scenario? And what is the vision that you hold for them as well? Yeah. And then if it's going to take a significant investigation to adequately quote for what they need, you need to charge for this. Yeah. Because I know a lot of, depending on the nature of your business, I've got clients who are consultants, and what they do is pretty abstract. They struggle to explain it even to me as their business coach. It requires time to really kind of get into the business and assess the situation in order to adequately or accurately quote or propose that work needs doing. Now, if that is you need to charge for that, yeah, because you do not want to spend, hours and hours and hours gathering information, interviewing staff, talking to people in order to, give them a quote that they say no to. Yeah, that's valuable time. Now, hopefully you know this already. Hopefully this is not news, but and if you've heard it before and you're not doing it, maybe this is the final hammer on the nail or nail on the hammer or whatever, and you go, right, I really do need to start doing that. Yeah, we don't go to Woolworths, we don't go to our local cafe and, eat and drink, take the groceries home and pay later. Yeah, it doesn't happen like that. So 50% shares the risk. It's a nice figure because it splits the risk evenly between you and the client. Yeah, and I would typically, depending on the nature of the project, depending on what it is, if it's a website design, for example, I would get a progress payment as well. I'd get, an additional 25% or maybe even 40%. So the last little bit is only 10% that's owing. So marketing is a service of sales. Yeah. All of the marketing that we do, all of the activities we do. And, as Oliver said, I'm a digital marketer. This is what I do. Marketing is what I do. But ultimately, all of this leads to sales. It has to lead to sales. Yeah. So I hear all day long, I hear from people, how much should I charge for this? How much should I, do you know the budget? What is the going rate? Blah, 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 blah. These are all fine questions, but they will only take you so far. Yeah. Ultimately, you need to decide what are my financial goals? Am I happy with 50,000? Am I happy with 80,000? Do I need 120? Do I need 180? Do I need 250? Whatever it is, yeah, decide on your financial goals and then put your energy into marketing and branding, because it's marketing and branding that's going to do the heavy lifting with communicating your value. The marketing and branding does the heavy lifting with positioning, you within the marketplace. All right, so pricing principles. We're getting right to the pointy end now. If Oliver's getting nervous, he's probably thinking, come on, Brooke, wrap it up. We are primed to never say yes the first time we hear the price. Yeah, I don't know about you, but certainly in my family, my parents, particularly my mother, very financially conservative, she said, never buy the first time. If you're really enthusiastic, it's even more important than you walk away. Yeah. So this is what we've been taught. This is how we've been socialized. People base decisions on the first piece of information they receive, which is a good argument against the ballpark figure, because you give a ballpark figure that's too low, and then, you get the proper brief and you go, oh no, there's no way I can do the work for this. And then you come in with the quote at this point, well then forget it, you've lost. Yeah, because you've anchored in their mind, they've only heard the first ballpark figure you gave them. Now, technology is a marvelous thing, particularly during COVID. It's brought more and more competition in marketing, so people can and will compare and contrast. It's just changed the nature of how we behave, of how we make decisions in relation to where we spend our dollars. We know we have choice. We know we have many more choices, and we spend a hell of a lot more time Googling and, trying to decide which is which, depending, of course, on the nature of the budget, depending on the spend. Now, technology also overstimulates us. So if you get to the end of the day and, you know, your husband or wife says, what do you want for dinner? And you're like, it's probably because you've spent all day making one decision after another decision after another. Yeah. So we're suffering from decision fatigue. This is a good argument to not send proposals at night time as well. Yeah. If you want a decision, make it, you know, send it in the morning. Make the decisions in the morning, send the proposals in the morning, have the sales phone calls in the morning. The goal of following up. Yeah, I cannot emphasize this enough. You are doing prospective customers a favor by following up. Following up shows that you are enthusiastic. And last time I checked, this is a good thing. Yeah, for every sale that you miss because you're too enthusiastic, you will miss 100 because you are not enthusiastic enough. So how do we use these principles apart from the follow-up? Yeah, because we've been taught, remember, never to buy on first blush. 50% of sales happen after the fifth follow-up. 50%. Can you imagine? I have had multiple customers who say to me, oh, yeah, no, yeah, and then they come back. I had a client come back to me, well, a prospective client come back to me 2 years after I quoted her. 2 years. All my quotes have expiry dates on them, 1 month expiries. I had followed up. They'd gone, no. And 2 years later, they came back to me. Yeah, this is not unusual. You can use price anchoring in proposals with a higher price next to a lower price. And you really need to price yourself, not in context with your competition, with your competitors, but in context with your other pricing. So if I raise this price, I'm wanting to raise that price as well. Because if somebody's seriously thinking about doing business with me, they're looking at all the various things that I've got for sale, and I've got price tags on my website. Most of my things have price tags next to them. So they're trying to make sense of, you know, where should I go? So, you know, definitely adjust your pricing in accordance with your other pricing. Now, in marketing, different is better than better. So you want to render your competitors irrelevant by amplifying your difference. Yeah, there is no official arbitrator of good enough, of good, better, and best. Such a thing does not exist. We waste years thinking, you know, that this is a thing, that it is not. There is only you standing out and you being the one that they want, your business being the one that they want. And they're not necessarily choosing you because you're the cheapest. I've had multiple clients tell me, we got a bunch of quotes, you were not the cheapest, but we're going with you. All right, final slide. Delight customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways. In other words, do great things and make money. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Well, actually, it's guys. There's a great opportunity for you to ask questions now for those on the Zoom room, but there's a really great conversation going on the Facebook feed now and in here as well around how you structure your pricing. So, you know, you were talking about 50-50 up front. And firstly, yep. Gabrielle makes the point that 50% is nice in an ideal world, but for many clients, it isn't an option, i.e. some government departments. Mm-hmm. How do you, any advice on sort of, you know, having a flexible approach to structured pricing so that you don't give everything away and you're not assuming all the risk yourself? Do you have a flexible approach to that yourself, or?
Yeah, look, I think that, you know, things seem impossible until you do them. You know, a price might seem impossibly out of reach and nobody's ever going to pay it until they pay it. Some terms and conditions just seem like, you know, a fantasy land until somebody actually says, okay. So you need to have that confidence to do that. You need to have that confidence to assert yourself. You need to have that confidence to push back. And I push back all the time. I said no to a client recently who wanted to give me money for a one-off session. I'm like, nah. I don't work like that. You can't pay me for a one-off session. You know, he went away 3 months, 4 months later, came back, purchased up front in full. So with government, I know that they can be incredibly slow. Ironically, they can be incredibly slow. I have worked with federal government departments as well as local councils before. So yeah, I mean, they are reliable for sure, but they can bankrupt your business. So don't underestimate that, because most small businesses close, not because they're not profitable, not because their balance sheet doesn't look good, but because they do not have enough cash to keep the doors open. They need the cash flow. So definitely, if you've got government clients and if they are not adhering to your payment terms, then you need to be able to manage your cash flow appropriately. And you can do that in a number of different ways, financial projections, budgeting, having a buffer, and having, of course, other clients from other industries that do adhere to your payment terms.
Awesome. And for anybody who's in the Zoom room, there is actually a great conversation going on Facebook Live. You can find that on our Facebook page between Jake and Chris, who are exploring all sorts of different tactics around, different deposits, different deposit sizes, how often you recharge over that sort of, subscription type payments as well to check things up anyway, so I'm not going to read it all out, but there's a very interesting conversation going on there, so worth having a look. Question from Bronwyn. She asks, really interested what you said about difference is better than better. I've done a micro business course and a business plan was seen as really important. Knowing lots of details about everybody else. So I guess that's more about, okay, well, I do need to know what my competitors are doing, but so how do I sort of balance that between trying to make myself different, but then also being able to have that conversation around, well, why should I go with you and not X, Y, Z type of question?
Look, I think, again, this kind of comes down to psychology. So if somebody said, why should I go with you and not X, Y, Z? I'd be leaning back in my chair and giving them a big wide smile and taking my sweet time to respond. Yeah, because they're clearly trying to get a rise out of you. They're clearly trying to get under your skin. So, learning how to manage that and learning how to manage that while keeping your emotions in check is super important. Yes, it's good to know what your competitors are doing. Absolutely, it's good to know what your competitors are doing, but I think most of us are watching our competitors far too closely, way too closely. Our competitors are also our colleagues. Our competitors are also fabulous, some of them, not all of them, fabulous people who can give us plenty of referrals and plenty of work, and perhaps more importantly, the emotional sustenance, if I can pronounce that, to keep on keeping on, which, we all need from time to time. This is not something that I think you can kind of get like that. Like I said, I've been 12 years in business. There's been an evolution. I've rebranded a couple of times. I didn't come out fully formed. It was definitely a work in progress, and it's still a work in progress. But I think asking for feedback from clients, listening closely, asking for testimonials, doing surveys, you start to see yourself in other people's eyes, and you start to see, yourself reflected back, because we miss our own strengths. We take our own strengths for granted. We do not see ourselves the way other people see us. And, that's a crying shame when it comes to marketing. So we have to ask other people. We have to listen for those recurring themes. Yeah?
Yeah, awesome. And I guess that just one other question. Actually, we covered this last month when we were looking at lessons from the first 12 months of a freelance career. And this is just a follow-up question. What are your thoughts on business plans as such? Like, a lot of people, you can get really sucked into a 400-page business plan and graphs and everything else. As a micro business, as a freelancer, as most of the audience is at the moment, where do you stand? Do you spend a lot of time yourself? Do you advise clients to be doing business plans?
No. So I created the Non-Planners Business Plan back in 2016. If you want to Google the Non-Planners Business Plan and maybe put my name in the Google search, you can find it. It's completely free. I think most of us don't have, I know most of us don't have business plans, and I work with some big businesses that look like they know what they're doing and they don't even have a marketing plan written down. They might have a schedule of content if they're lucky, but they don't have a marketing plan. So very, very common. For me, planning has been a big, I'm a bit of an evangelist because I'm one of those people that it doesn't come naturally to me. I have had to work really, really hard, and the non-planner's business plan was part of that process. So yeah, most business plans, forget it. They're boring as batshit. Nobody reads them. What's the point? Unless you're pitching for investors, you don't need a business plan. But you do need some kind of a plan, and definitely you need sales revenue targets. I'm amazed by how many businesses don't have those. I had that from day one. I knew exactly how much I wanted to earn. Set yourself a goal, have a revenue goal and a profit goal for every week, every month, every fortnight, every year. And definitely you need a marketing plan. You need to know, what are you promoting, what's coming up, what marketing materials do you need.
Great. Now, guys, thanks for everybody who's put the questions in. We will get to them all. I'm actually going to go back to the beginning and the first question from Christy, who's been waiting quite patiently. This is back to one of your first slides, I think, Brooke, and she says, can you please explain how press coverage that doesn't mention your business can be used? I didn't quite get that. Thanks.
Yeah, so what I've been talking about lately in my business and within my communities is, the fact that we need to be optimistic. We need to be optimistic about the state of the economy. We need to have confidence that we can earn money. We need to have confidence that we don't have to discount our services, and that is absolutely supremely important, not just for our individual businesses, but for the Australian economy and, the wider world economy in general. We must have that confidence if we're to imbue confidence in our prospective customers. I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So media. So I am deliberately looking for good news, and there is plenty of it. Yeah, I'm deliberately looking for businesses that are doing well. And there have been plenty of them. There have been sectors and industries that are doing well. So I can use that to help, illustrate the fact that now is a fabulous time to start a business, or now is a fantastic time, so long as you've got grit and perseverance, so long as you're, open-minded and willing to pivot perhaps or change what you're doing. Now is, a perfect time to be earning more money. Does that help? Does that answer that question, I hope?
I think so. Well, we'll see. We'll see what Christy says. She's still on, so we'll see if she comes with a follow-up question. In the meantime, the next question from Ashley, which is on payment terms. What are your thoughts? She's asked 14 days, 28 days. What's the best for your payment terms?
Money up front in full is best.
Yeah, fair enough.
So look, I used to have 28-day payment terms. I pulled it back to 14 days, and that definitely helped. I have had clients who've had to go on payment plans before because they owed so much money in arrears. They got behind in paying their invoices, and I kept working, and they kept accruing further invoices. We can do some really interesting things now, which I think that we should absolutely jump on. Things such as putting clients on payment plans. So let's take a copywriting job or a web design job where it's fairly large. Let's say you get 50% up front. And then what most people do perhaps is they then go, okay, well, once I deliver that, I'll get paid that bit. Once I deliver that, I get paid that bit. But what does the client do? They drag their heels, they take forever, they disappear, they come back, they want to change everything. So rather than do it like that, if you can put them on a payment plan where this comes out regularly, and them dragging their heels is only impacting them. Yeah, because you've already got the money, and because the money's in your bank account, you can be a little bit more ballsy and say, dude, you said you were going to deliver this information to me and I'm still waiting, so what's the dealio? So that can really work really well. I think we should definitely be offering credit card payments. We should definitely be considering things like payment plans and automatic payment plans so that you're not having to manually chase people.
Awesome. Now, the next question is from Lisa, and I think that this is specifically to do with working for not-for-profits.
Yeah.
What do you do when asked to do pro bono work and don't have the capacity? And this is when this is somebody that you've known in the past or worked with in the past.
You say no. Is that enough? It's a complete sentence, no. Yeah, and none of us are very good at it. I'm talking about myself as well. It takes practice. Yeah. You can have a templated response. You can, I'm a bit of a wordsmith, so I want to get it perfect, and then I can copy and paste it over and over again. If you don't have capacity, you don't owe anybody anything. Yeah. So I have that same tendency to want to give, which is, might explain the first few years of disaster in my business. So what I did is I funneled that generosity into my marketing. So I give away all my gold. Yeah. And so I never feel guilty about my prices because somebody's willing to help themselves to all the things, all the free stuff on my website. Go ahead, take it, do with it what you want. But I'm not going to overextend myself and start to resent life and resent my business because I'm worked to the bone. Yeah, it doesn't help me. It doesn't help anyone.
I think there's another way perhaps of looking at this, and this is something we talk about internally at Rounded, especially when we make priorities around product development, because we have a million things that we can do, but only a certain amount of time and resources. So what we always think about is actually the decision about what we do isn't always the most difficult decision. It's being comfortable with what we don't do.
Yeah.
So I think that perhaps, Lisa, if you're, because working for a not-for-profit might be something that you're super, super passionate about, but I think there's an acknowledgement in yourself that, okay, well, if I do this and I don't have capacity, if this is an extra 10%, I'm going to have to take 10% from somewhere else and take it out.
Yeah.
And am I okay with doing that? And if the answer is yes, then yeah, you can do it. But if the answer is no, then as you say, Brooke, you just have to say no.
Yeah, and as Crystal said, they do have budget. In fact, when I first started years and years back, I had a colleague who specialized in consulting to not-for-profits. And she said to me, there's heaps of money to be made in not-for-profit because they want to keep their fixed cost low. They want to keep their staff cost low, but they still have money. They still have work to be done. They've got jobs that need doing, and they do need those jobs to be done. But, think about, don't resent somebody for asking for something for nothing or ask for a discount, because that's what we've been taught. Yeah. Our parents probably taught us always ask for a discount, always try and haggle. Yeah. So I don't ever resent anyone for attempting to, ask for a discount. That's fine. That's their right to ask for a discount. And it's my right to say no.
Awesome. Now, a great question from Martina, actually, and I reckon there's a ton of people wanting to get some answers for this. So she says, how do you get over the mental hurdles of charging the right amount? For example, you calculate the right quote, it's a fair chunk of money, and then you question whether you can even charge that and start discounting before you even give it to the client.
Look, it's good to see you here, Martina. I've got so much to say on this. This is, this could be hours and hours and hours, ideally with a few wines. I think, I think we have so much baggage that relates to money. I think we all have baggage that relates to money because it has such a powerful effect on our lives, on the decisions we make. It has a flow-on effect in so many different areas that we all have hang-ups. And I think it just kind of comes with practice. So one of the things I do is I put my price on Post-it notes. If I raise my price, which I've done recently, I'll put it on a Post-it note and I'll look at it. And that's my normal. Yeah. And I remember, the quotes that I've given over the years, there's a massive, range of pricing. And if I go up and I ask for something that I think is preposterous, and then somebody said, well, not preposterous, but it's like, wow, I'd be excited if this came about. And then someone says yes, it's like, okay, that is possible. It has just been demonstrated to me that somebody thinks that that's excellent value. Yeah, it's been demonstrated to me in real life that is, excellent value. There's plenty of physiological things that you can do to improve your self-confidence. So I think of self-confidence and self-esteem as two different things. Self-esteem is internal. Self-confidence, you know, it's an act. It is a verb. It is what we do. It is how we perform in the world. There are lots and lots of things that you can do to get better at performing self-confidence and to get better at manipulating your own physiology so that you feel better. You know, things like having a good night's sleep, standing up tall, not wearing your bathrobe to the desk, you know, getting dressed. That was a big deal in the first few years. You know, having a shower and getting dressed and sitting at, you know, the home office. Oh, wow, look at me. You know, these have very real effects. So all of these things will help.
Awesome. And I think that that's a perfect segue into the final question that we've got from Jessie, who asked for any tips on discussing price increases with long-term clients. This is a great question.
I would not blindside them. Yeah. So this was a hard one lesson to me. I keep thinking that people like surprises because I love surprises. As it turns out, most people hate surprises. So you have to keep signposting what you intend to do. Give people a heads up that this is coming, and give them, you know, a little bit of time, not too much time. Lots of my clients are like, oh, I'll wait till July 1. That's like 5 months away. What are you doing? So you don't have to give them too much notice, but do give them notice. And then I would actually practice the conversation. I do a lot of talking to myself in the shower, depending on, you know, what I'm doing that particular day. I would practice having conversations with clients, especially difficult, awkward conversations that I'm not wanting to have. I'll say them out loud because I don't want it to be the first time I say it out loud is when it really actually matters. You know, you don't want to be defensive. It shouldn't sound like an apology. You know, you don't want to say it in such a tone that it sounds like you're seeking permission. You are in charge. You're telling them how it is. And ideally, you're always attempting to communicate. You're always trying to communicate in their best interest. This is in your best interest. I have invested, you know, significant time and money in my own education, and it's in your best interest. This price rise is in your best interest. Maybe, you know, I'm getting a little bit more, perhaps I'm getting a little bit more structured in my process, and you're now going to receive, you know, regular monthly reports. Perhaps we're going to have a half-hour catch-up every, you know, 2 weeks so that I can talk you through this, that, and the other. Whatever it is, you want to present it in the client's best interest, but never make it sound like an apology.
Fantastic.